Hello again, beautiful people, and welcome back to another guest episode here on the Make Mental podcast. As always, Caleb Bunsky, your host, this time alongside quite an amazing guest. I know all of our guests, we just continue to surprise ourselves one after the other, a rock star lineup. But we have on Lorenzo P. Lewis. Lorenzo, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much to this wonderful platform, Make Mine. I'm just glad to be here and continue to share the great message. So thank you again, Caleb, for having
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Lorenzo has over a decade of mental health speaking experience, and he is a highly sought after, dynamic keynote speaker, thought leader, and social entrepreneur dedicated to transforming lives through empowerment and advocacy in the mental health space. From his humble beginnings, his personal adversities, and everything in between, which I'm sure we'll learn about, he has created the Confess Project. His story is a powerful testament to resilience and purpose, and he's been featured in numerous magazines and news stations, ranging from Oprah to the Kelly Clarkson Show to NPR, ABC News, the Wall Street Journal, and his experience was sought after by Google, Snapchat, TEDx, Harvard, the National Alliance for Mental Health. I mean, the Clinton Foundation, you name it, he has been there. So we definitely, as I mentioned earlier, have a wonderful guest on. Lorenzo, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, your upbringing, maybe why you decided to transform lives and what that personal adversity was?
Yeah, no, absolutely. My story definitely is rooted in humble beginnings because, my story started in a prison. My mother was incarcerated when I was born into this world. And so I always tell people that I was born in one of the worst places that's known to mankind, and that's being incarcerated. Being born in that place, obviously the opposition was already there. And so a lot was against who I needed to become. I obviously had two choices, right? I could go into that system of mass incarceration myself, or I could figure out a new pathway to create for myself, my family, the people that I love, the people that I've surrounded myself with. And so I did a little bit of both. When I was a young person, I was convicted of a misdemeanor and almost a felony crime. And I was given another shot. And so I took that shot and I went to college and I made something of myself. And in the process, I went through a deep depression. I lost my mom. And I just went through a lot of changes, really reflecting back on my life, early childhood traumas that I had faced, not being raised by my mother and father, recognizing that they had issues and that I stayed with my aunt and uncle. They did the best that they can do. But in spite of all of that, I still faced emotional challenges. Saying that to say, that helped to birth the work that I do at the Confess Project, right? It's when you confess, you become your best. We built an organization that really focuses on healing, building a safe place. And so happening that was barbershops and salons. It did not start off like that. Our work really started off going to community spaces such as libraries to really invite African-American men to come talk about their problems. Recognizing at the time that African-American men really had not a whole lot of outlets. The data showed that they struggled with mental health. And when you thought about crime and a lot of the other issues that happen in the African-American community, I knew that I could step up and really take this on. For someone who had been just as involved and family members who had went through different problems, I was obviously someone who could really be a part of champion change, but I also had those experiences involved in gang activity, had been almost convicted with a firearm and being a felony, taking a felony conviction, changing my life around and going to get 2 college degrees and becoming a community leader. What better way to say that I could be a part of this champion change? And so what I've been able to do is use my story as a platform, paint a purpose, and really helping to bring communities together to talk about mental health, but by using innovative solutions such as barbershops. And so as I know we'll get into this more, but this work has been obviously now championed by Ivy League institutions such as Harvard University and government entities such as SAMHSA, the Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. I'm just glad that now to know that this innovative solution that I had in my mind is really now working, and it's scaling now to reach 5 million people across 35 states and 63 cities. And so I'm glad again to share more of this. And thank you so much again for today.
Let me tell you about the Sleep With Me podcast. If you struggle to get a good night's sleep like me, I need you to check out this podcast. Each episode is crafted to help you unwind, featuring gentle storytelling designed to ease your mind and guide you into restful slumber. I kid you not. Whenever I'm anxious in bed at night, I turn it on, and before I know it, it's morning, and I'm as refreshed as I've ever been. I am not sure how it works, but trust me when I tell you, it does. So, join me and thousands of others who have turned restless nights into peaceful sleep with the help of the Sleep With Me podcast. Go Global is a free-flowing technology company that handcrafts, embellishes, and manufactures garments and accessories. Designed on the principles of people, places, and possibilities, Go Global reimagines fashion and is inspired by you, the people of the world. Yeah, I mean, an incredible, humble beginning story there. Like you said, I don't know. Definitely a first for us of being born in a prison. So this is going to be, I get, not that I get excited about what happened or the scenario, the situation, but when you can find the joy in anything, when you can, like you said, turn the pain into purpose, that's what excites me. And I like to dig deeper and figure out what makes Lorenzo Lorenzo, or our guest, and then how you're able to shed that light and share it with the world, because it's one thing to have that recognition, that understanding, that drive and purpose, but then it's a whole nother thing to be able to kind of put your feelings to words and share that with other people. Have you always been on that path? Have you always been kind of an outgoing person who shares everything, is an open book, and lives through their experiences? Or was that something that you kind of had to work at as you grew?
Yeah, it was not always that easy. Obviously, when I started this work through really telling my story. The work that we did by going to barbershops was just really an idea that I really didn't think would go far. But it was the perfect idea because it really illuminated how you tell stories with people that you feel the most comfortable with in a very comfortable environment. Saying that to say, growing up, no, I was definitely not the greatest communicator. I mean, I was a kid who had went through, being suspended and low academic performance, someone who had been counted out with low self-esteem and low confidence, someone who had not been empowered and really showed, seen and heard and loved and cherished. So I did not have a voice. And I believe now that's why I have a voice. It's because I recognized that I was so undefeated, underserved, is that when I had an opportunity to really now tell my story, I'm able to tell in the most comfortable and empowering way. It took a lot to get here, a lot of therapy, a lot of healing, a lot of mentoring, a lot of coaching, and really being advised by some of the most dynamic people that I've met in my life. And so I'm just really grateful that I've had that enrichment and infrastructure personally to now tell my story. But hopefully that my story is a sentiment and a connection for other people, because I believe that our stories are not for us, they're truly for others. And so, that's how I've defined my voice. That's how I've defined our platform. And also, we've brought on many people from across the United States in many marginalized communities that's telling their story. We have barbers now that have built movements in their local towns. In Louisville, Kentucky, there's a barber that we work with who's now built an intervention for young people cutting their hair at public schools and in public libraries and empowering them with resources and working with the school district. And other barbers, on the other hand, who are doing give backs in communities. And this has all become because they've been empowered. They've shown that their light can shine. So I'm just glad to know that what we do allow for other people's light to shine in a way that allows them to show up in their own space, because we know that what we do won't reach everybody. It's just we're only one organization that's really going to do one thing, and that's empower people. But we're just glad that we have built and revolutionized the industry to giving other organizations an opportunity and other people to innovate in the world, in the mental health sector, right? But also in the world of social change.
Yeah, but before we jump into the barbershop community and what that means to you, and I'm curious, I know that four pillars kind of for that community, or that you pride yourself on, are active listening, validation, positive communication, and the reduction of the mental health stigma. A theme I'm noticing not only in you, but in all the guests that come on in general, is they apply those pillars to themselves first. It's always look inward before going outward. It's always, as you kind of mentioned, you can't reach everyone. It's always take care of my corner of the world, which starts with yourself, so that way you can help others take care of theirs. Does that resonate with you at all? I know you spoke a little bit about how you had to overcome some self-esteem and some depression issues, but how did you apply those four principles to yourself before then being able to be considered a thought leader in it and share it with others?
Yeah. You know, when I first started this work, I found myself, I had someone that asked me in the community, it's like, what do you do for your own mental health? How do you take care of yourself? And honestly, I didn't know how to answer that question because I wasn't doing anything at the time. I wasn't actually performing what I was trying to get other people to do. So I took a walk with understanding that I needed to explore that. And so I did, and started to explore that through therapy as an option, talk therapy, traditionally just really navigating and having those conversations with a therapist. It didn't allow me to go deep into my past, the different traumas that I had faced, family members who were, going through substance use and drug and alcohol addiction, people who had, witnessed violence. I witnessed a lot of physical violence, domestic violence, community violence, and all these things had impacted me. It impacted my perspective, my perception of life. It had tainted the way that I saw life. And so I needed help, and I sought that help. And that help allowed me to think about the organization. Well, as I started to build the organization, we needed a cohesive way of building a model, right? And so we needed a model. How do we navigate? And, we came up with that our Beyond the Shop model that's rooted in evidence-based now, mental health support. And it's an early stage intervention that trained folks to be mental health advocates. But really that model is not like it's nothing new. We've just made it work for the communities we've made it work for. So actually those pillars are really rooted in DBT, dialectical behavioral technique, which is a therapeutic talk therapy framework. I used to work in the DBT model when I worked in the mental health facilities years ago. And I worked with that model with young people who have went through depression and anxiety. And it's used as a way to help individuals navigate and use self-acceptance, use mental health tools for themselves. So it's a real self-driven therapeutic model that individuals can use that does validation and self-acceptance within self. Because when you go to therapy, therapy is a tool and it helps to create tools, but then you have to use those tools to become better. It's just like going to a doctor. They give you medicine and they may tell you to do this every day, but if you're not taking care of that, you're going to continue to stay on the medicine. You won't get better, and you actually may get worse. So with our mental health, it's the same thing, right? We have to practice mental health tools. We have to use the mental health skills so that we can become the best version of ourselves. And so that's what I've been able to accomplish for self. And what we're doing now is that framework is allowing other people to use it. We've scaled this framework across the United States, allowing other people to navigate this now, train a trainer. And we're just having an amazing time partnering with entities, barbershops, salons, community spaces, city governments, state government leaders to say that, hey, this is a model that can be used in your spaces, particularly in the Black community, and so because we know that there's a lot of mental health challenges for the Black community and there hasn't been solution. So this is a real solution that's been verified by Harvard University. We tested with Black barbershops across Southeastern and Midwestern states to say that, hey, this model can be used not only in Black barbershops, but also in communities that may be marginalized and underserved. So they may be going through alcohol and drug addiction or domestic violence. So our research also encompasses interpersonal community violence and domestic violence alongside mental health and suicide prevention. To say that everyday people can really help to build a mental health workforce, because right now we don't have enough therapists. There's not enough people out here to give professional help. So we have to build a workforce in a tremendous way. And that's what we've been able to accomplish here at our organization.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of preparation met opportunity. Like I said, you did all the work for yourself. You had a lot of personal experiences, for better or for worse. But again, like I said, you chose to be the light in that scenario and share that preparation with the opportunity. Now turns into a movement, right? 63 cities. I think you said 30 states, barbershops, salons, libraries, communities, underserved communities. That's incredible. I don't know if people understand the gravity behind that. That's very difficult to do, number one. And number two, it's incredible that enough people have attached themselves to this movement of yours where it's gaining quite a bit of steam. I'm curious, as someone who, I mean, it obviously is not part of the African American community, what is it with barbershops? Because I had Wes Woodson, a day one on the Make Mental podcast. He is also a black male, and he spoke saying he felt like there was not enough support when he was growing up, but he found it himself, kind of like you did. He recently, just on his own platform, was at a barbershop talking about mental health. Coincidence? I don't know.
Yep,
But
yep,
that's
yep.
two people in my life now who are talking about barbershops. I want to know what it is about barbershops, and am I missing out on something here?
Yeah, it's truly the country club for men. I think beyond just black men, I mean, grooming establishments, you know, are really like where you feel good and look good and you can truly be yourself. So whether you are from any community, hair, nails, pedicures, whatever that looks like, people are feeling good, looking good, and they truly can be themselves. When you think about most grooming sessions are held in the most closest proximity, someone is controlling the chair in most cases. They're controlling sharp objects around you. They're talking to you, right? This is more intimate than a session like that you would have with a doctor or a physician. But it's in a community space. And so that's why a lot of this is really powerful because the close proximity, that human to human connection that we don't get on social media, this is in person, that we get once, twice, or three times a month. It's really happening, and that's therapeutic. And so I think that we have to recognize the human energy and the human connection and the human contact. That's the first piece. The second piece of this, particularly with black barbershops, is the civil rights movement started out of black barbershops. Voting and a lot of the civic participation and the NAACP organized in barbershop. When Dr. Martin Luther King was going through the South and going through different places, he went to churches and barbershops, and they went there and they convened. And so it's been historically seen as a place of change, a place of opportunity. And so this is truly why we have chosen this establishment to talk about mental health, but really to talk about how we can better our communities overall.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight and the background history there. I I noticed a pattern of not creating something completely brand new. And hear me out. Obviously, your message, the way you've approached it is innovative, it's new, it's exciting, it's connecting again after the world had gone through, I know off recording here we talked about COVID, gone through a period where social connection was limited to squares and screens. You when society was allowed to resume normal functions, you said, okay, where are people going to go first? Whether you meant to or not, it seems like that was part of the
Yeah,
thought process here. I'd like to think you're that smart. Come on now, man.
yeah,
I'll give you
absolutely.
credit. You thought of it. Here we go. You didn't say, I need to create something brand new. You said, okay, where's something that I can reach the most people that's already there, right? You worked extremely smart to find an already established process, barbershops, communities, libraries, worship centers, churches. And you said, how can we present this message to people who need it most? I think that's ingenious. And honestly, I'm jealous I didn't think of it. But Now that you're in those spaces, what is a challenge you currently face in those spaces? Now that you have the message there, that people are connecting with you, that they are smiling, they're trusting their barbers, their pastor, whatever. What's a challenge now for you that you're looking to overcome in those spaces?
Overcrowdedness, there's a lot of overcrowdedness now with community engagement. There's a lot of organizations who are, approaching these spaces. I don't believe they're prepared and trained and supported to be in these spaces. I believe you really have to know the historical connection with these places. You really have to understand and build relationships. It's not just about going to put up a poster board or hand out flyers, like really having a real relationship with barbers. A lot of the barbers that we talk to, we still talk to. We have a monthly call that we do every second and fourth Monday. We still host convenings where we're, you know, showing love to barbers, supporting them. Our sponsors provide clippers, wellness products. We really support these folks throughout the year. And I think that's really important that we acknowledge that these are business owners first, and that they're not just machines, right? I think the other concern that could pose is that how many people would really get the help through their barber? It's not even a concern. I think it's more of a thought. So what we've done is we provided just resources. And this training is like, you're not going to become a therapist. We're going to train you to be an advocate, and that's it, right? So I think one of the other concerns is that people may expect for us to be superheroes when we're just not superheroes. We're here to help make the behavior workforce be better, not help to say that we have therapists in shop. But that's not what we're doing. And I want to make sure that that's said on the record, because I believe a lot of people can confuse this for like actually going to a therapy session, right? And so, and I say that because everyone won't understand our message because it is so innovative. No, I have to go to therapy on the couch. I have to go to therapy at a building. I have to go to therapy in a private room. Yes, you do. But you can also have a barber that's an advocate that supports you, right? And that doesn't have to be a therapy session. So, but that can be a session to help prevent you before you have to go to therapy, before you have to be hospitalized, before you go and commit a crime, before you do harm to self or others. That's what we do. Is we're an early stage intervention model that helps to adapt people to not making those heinous decisions that can happen. So we're a prevention opportunity that I believe organizations now, whether you're hospitals, city government, schools, they see the value. This can help them with saving costs. This can help them with lowering issues. This can help them with staff retention, losing people, right? Because when we bring this model, it also allows for people to be connected to something where they are seen, heard, and validated. So, and it also is nourishing. People love to be in control. Believe it or not, people love to, at least most people love to be in control of their life. This model allows for people to be in control of their life, control of their destiny, because we're teaching them skills. And when you have skills, you perform, right? When you're good at sports, you practice, you have a skill, you perform. We're giving people the skills to perform and show up for themselves and for the people that they
Yeah, I appreciate that acknowledgement of, well, they are superheroes in their own respect, but they're not necessarily trained mental health
absolutely.
professionals. And I'll echo that for you because that is very important. And I know it's a massive responsibility for those barbers to take on. So a quick shout out to them, to the fashion workers, to the community center hosts. I know that probably wasn't the right term, but you know who you are if you're
No, no, for
listening to
sure, for
this and
sure. Yep,
smiling.
yep, yep, yep.
Um, I, as a coach, often feel that way. And I don't, obviously, totally different occupation than a barber, but sometimes you feel like you have to be
Very
there for
similar.
every single person on your team and you try your best. And it's nearly impossible, right? You can connect with each of them, but some of them it's hard to make that connection with for one reason or another. I always tell, I coach women's soccer, I tell them, look, you can come to me. I'm the assistant coach, right? I will listen to you. I will hear you out. Whether I agree with your opinion or not, if it's playing time, XYZ, you come to me. I can bring up the concern to the head coach, but you have to realize that he might not understand where you're coming from either, right? If he's married or has children, they have families to provide for, coaches. If it's their job, right? Their job is to perform, get you to be your best version of self, so that way they can collect their paycheck. Now, in the case of a barber, right, they need to have a good haircut, a good fade, or a good edge up in order to keep their job. So it's even more important to realize that what they're doing is extracurricular. They're doing it because they care about a mission, because they see value in every single person that comes in their seat, besides the dollar sign, right? Because this advocacy program really doesn't have to do with how good the haircut looks. Obviously, the better haircut you get, the more people you can get your seat, the more people you can help. So it's an incentive. But what you do to support your barbers, as you mentioned, is also crucial to the mission. Have you ever had a barber that's struggling come to you? And I guess this is geared more towards the individuals who are advocates and who do have that skill set already that are struggling. Have you ever had a barber come to you, or one of the advocates you have, and say, Lorenzo, I'm really struggling. So and so came up to me, told me X, Y, and Z, and I genuinely did not know how to.
Absolutely. It happens often. And believe it or not, we've had a lot of these guys in the initial did not feel empowered because they just didn't feel empowered. They didn't feel like they were good enough. They're like, hey, I'm just a barber. I'm not a superhero. I'm not a therapist. So what we've also done now as well, we train frontline workers, like outside of barbers, therapists, educators, coaches, because they're a part of the barbershop community. So the name of our framework is Beyond the Shop, because once you leave this place, that's really where the real work happens anyway. Between that 30, 45 minutes, just like a therapy session, there's only so much you can do. You can receive the skills, the tools, but you got to go back out into the world. You got to live life. You got to execute on life. You got to show up every day. And so that's why we call it Beyond the Shop, right? That's our ethos, because you have to travel beyond this place and still be your best self. Your light still has to shine beyond being a part of this barbershop community, right? So we've decided that in order to really make this as powerful that it needs to be, it has to include being a part of supporting other folks outside of being barbers and stylists. To your question, to go deeper, is that yes, a lot of them don't feel equipped, mostly because they've been compromised in their life, right? Like they haven't had people to show up for them, or they just don't have confidence in self, and so, but also on the other side, a lot of them have had instances where people say, hey, I don't want to live any longer in the barber chair.
Mm.
Hey, when I leave here, I'm going to hurt such and such with a fire, and they have to be a part of helping to mitigate, right? And so some of them are empowered, but a lot of them are not as empowered. And it just kind of varies. We like to work with places that already have community engagement experience. When we're evaluating this, like there's questions that we're asking about community engagement. What are the type of clients that they see? What does the clientele look like? What kind of money do most of them make? Like do they serve more young people than adults? So we like to understand the ethos of their clientele and their demographics. Like we have some barbers, they don't cut young kids here past a certain age. Like, hey, because they just don't, because younger kids are harder to cut sometimes because they can't sit still during a haircut, So like they only choose to cut after the age of 7, 8. So these are things we have to know, because it's important to know the type of people they're dealing with.
Yeah, the strategic approach to every decision you make is evident, and I really admire that, and that's something we're looking to do over here at Make Mental. Probably staying out of the barbershops and beauty space. That is obviously not my thing. I mean, I go probably not enough, although we just got it soon, so we're still looking
Yeah,
at
yeah.
that. But I'm curious. On the flip side, we'll jump back again, probably more to your story. Obviously, what you're doing in the community is fantastic. On the days where you still struggle, because mental health is a lifelong process, it just is. There's no other way around it. On the days that you still struggle, Who do you rely on? Do you rely on those barbers? Do you have a support system in place for you because you are the support system for so many?
What I've learned over the years is really, you really have to save yourself first. When you get on the airplane, the first thing they tell you is like, they show you how to do the life jacket demonstration. If something happens, to make sure that put this vest on, and then you can help the person that's next to you. And so that shows you that you have to save yourself first. It's taken a lot of time for me to realize that self-care is really important. But yes, I do have a support system. Me and my wife have a close relationship. She's our CEO of the organization. We have some amazing people around us, but I also have some really amazing just mentors and people I've met over the years. I have some really amazing superheroes in my life that I can rely on, and I'm really grateful that I can pick up the phone. Like, hey, how you feel about this, man? This is kind of confusing. Trying to figure this out. What's your thoughts? And so it feels good to have that. And I think but you have to have people that have capacity to have that. Everyone doesn't have capacity, and so I've learned over years that those people that you may invest into, make sure they have capacity. Make sure that they have the emotional capacity to navigate with you. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it also took me, still takes me, some time to realize that self care isn't selfish. That's one of
Yeah,
our taglines over here at Make Mental. I'm sure it's not exclusive to us, but we just love it so much we keep saying it.
absolutely.
Self care
So true.
is
So true.
not selfish.
So true.
And it
So true.
feels like it. That's
Yep.
why it's so difficult. I mean, for me, self care, I always thought I was just being lazy, right? And no one wants to be associated as lazy all the time. I would take a personal day maybe, and I felt lazy. If I wasn't doing something every single second of every single day, I felt like opportunities were wasted. I felt like I wasn't bettering myself. This, that, and the other thing. I mean, that's just the way I felt. When you have downtime, or if you have downtime, I know you're a busy man.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you fill it with to recharge your cup? Because I know for a lot of our listeners, they're like, all right, Caleb, I understand that self care is no longer selfish, right? But now when I have that downtime to have that self care, they're not even used to having it. What do you do in your downtime to give yourself self care? Maybe our listeners can take one of your hobbies up.
Yeah, yeah. So, honestly, I started back playing video games about a year ago. I've taken a long break from it. I'm going to start back, just playing some, video games. But also, I recently,
What's the game of choice? What's the game of choice?
I love Grand Theft. Grand Theft Auto is it's been yeah, yeah. I just it's also trying to get into, some of the Madden, some of the sports stuff. I'm still trying to, get into that. But yeah, I've really had a
NCAA football's back out.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
upset because they don't have it for my Xbox type. I
yeah.
gotta either get a new Xbox or be patient here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna have to try that out as well. Outside of that is really, I find myself really listening to audiobooks quite often. I go out to the track. I go to a trainer a few days a week. Really, working out. Really, that's been a game changer for me. It's kind of mentally not knowing that physical health is just as important as your mental. So I've really taken a stance towards doing that and really making it a priority. And so, 3 to 4 days a week, I'm with someone, for 30, 45 minutes, and I'm drilled in on an hour to say on, you know, uh, working out. And so that's really helped me to focus, to block out the phones, the emails, the alerts, the texting team members, the jumping on calls. And so that's been very helpful as well. It's really finding that physical health in my mental health journey. So.
Yeah, the interconnectedness between your brain and your body is a topic for a whole nother episode, but I don't want to let that point go to the wayside. Obviously, a walk, couple push-ups, couple sit-ups, just stand, stretch a little bit, just get that blood flowing because your brain needs blood and oxygen. Without it, we know the results. I know you said you enjoyed ebooks, so I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't shout out Jonathan Sprinkles really quick. I don't know if you're familiar with Jonathan, but he is another guest that we have had on the podcast. I've been blessed to meet him and actually kind of have him as like a semi mentor, I guess you would call it.
Yep,
He's
yep,
he
yep.
does mentorship, and he is a mentor for so many that I don't bug him often. But when I do, he always hits me with, he calls them like these sprinkles truth bombs. He sprinkles truth bombs on you. But his book, his ebook, most recent, is called "Get Off Your Butt," BUTT, and make it happen. Not sure if you've read it yourself, Lorenzo, but it does kind of align with the message you've been presenting. So for you, I wanted to mention that for you if you had time to read it. It's on Amazon, I think. And for our listeners, right? Obviously, Lorenzo is an author himself, so we are going to prioritize his books this episode, but he is a mental health advocate and he is a person first, Lorenzo is. And in this space, another thing that's really hard to understand, which I'm going to ask for your opinion on, is if it's not me, we still want people to receive the help they deserve. And I feel like when people often see what we do as a business, what we do as a way of living, what we do as this, that, or the other thing, it starts off as a personal mission in your case, a pledge to be better. It starts off as a lived experience in both of our cases. It starts off as our passion, as our reason why, and continues to be. And then when you're a business brain, it takes up so much of your time. You almost have to go, okay, it's taking up so much of my time. It's costing me X amount of money. How do you keep it alive? Then it becomes a business. It's a passion before it's a business.
Yep, yep.
When people don't necessarily come into the spaces that you are involved in, those barbershops, and they go a different direction, what words of wisdom do you have for them? Because some people listening to this episode may never be graced by one of your communities. What words of wisdom do you have for them and the people that they're following? How do you advise they take advice from their mentors?
Yeah, I think just being like steadfast and really being attentive, but also knowing your North Star. I always tell people to like know where you're trying to go and really stick to that. It's really been something that I would advise for people to do with their mentors tremendously. And I believe when you do so, you really find great results. When you know your North Star, when you know where you're going. I think a lot of times people get into like doing things and not being really clear about planning out. You don't have to know day to day, but like what I want to accomplish in the next year. I want to accomplish in the next 2 years, 3 years. Like right now, I'm planned out to the next 4 years of how I want things to look for me, right? But I may have to pivot. I may have to shift. Things may change. Oh, this happens sooner. But it's like having a plan and really sticking to that plan. But having mentors and advisors that know that plan, that can help you on
Mm-hmm.
that plan. I personally recently started talking to a career coach. I have some later goals that I want to achieve that's I'm still working on now, like actualizing it. But, getting a career coach is like, hey, how do I go through a career transition? Like, if I wanted to deal with another sector, like what are some things I need to do? Joining community, joining masterminds, like really being intentional. Your goal is X, and this is how we got to get right. And so I think that's something that I would tell people that they can take up with their mentors.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm always a fan of a good analogy. And when you said know your North Star and have someone there, if you can pick out that star in the sky, when it disappears on cloudy days, you still have to go up, right? You still know the direction you're going, even though you can't see it perfectly. When those clouds dissipate and the stars come back into view, do you know where that star is, right? There's so many in the sky. Well, if you've already picked out the star, if you've done that much work with this person or this group or this mastermind or with yourself, when those clouds disappear, you are still going the right direction. You can pick it out in the sky like it's the Big Dipper or the Milky Way. However, when the clouds stay up for a long time, it gets more difficult. Last really tough question here, and then I'll let you get into some more of your works. When the clouds do stay in the sky long for you, how do you push them out of the way? When it comes down to, I mean, it's you at the end of the day. When Lorenzo's having a bad day, he can talk to as many mentors as he wants. He can get as much advice as he wants. He can do whatever he wants, but it's him who has to take the action. How do you push through those clouds?
I think a lot of it is just like rationalization of like where you're trying to go, what you're willing to deal with. And so I have a thing where I always ask myself, is it life or death? Can it be delegated? what type of action that needs to be taken. Is it something that can be postponed, or is there something I can do different? I always try to ask myself these formula questions, right? And I typically, by doing that, I can always say, okay, is it something I have to deal with? It's not, is it life or death? Is it something that needs to have an action taken? Is it something that can be, postponed, or is it something different I could do? And typically, when I talk to myself in that way, I always find an answer, right? I always find, okay, because some things are not really forced, right? Some things are not death situation. It's like, okay, I have life, but I need to do X, and some things are truly just a lesson and a blessing, right? I think that, we often have to understand that there is maintenance that has to be done before we really get into being able to thrive. So I think that's something that I've taken on is what type of maintenance have we done? Like, what type of maintenance are we going to do? Like, even when we take on a new project, new support, new whatever that may be, like, how much time is it going to take? Is this something that, is going to take all of my joy? Like, it's just asking these questions, like, before we get into this. This is going to take my joy. I may not need to do that. Well, this is going to take my time. Oh, I can have somebody to help me. Like, so just really doing self-talk and rationalizing, like, what makes sense for me. Because we really have to make sure that our, like, inner self is filled up inside. Like, our cup has to still run over, even in the midst of something going on, because life it's just difficult. It's very difficult. It can be very difficult. And so I think having those, like, rational questions ready to execute is going to be helpful for people because, you may have to put out 3 fires today. You may have to put out 7 tomorrow, but you still got to get to the weekend and you may have to do it next week. And you still got to be with family. You still have priorities. You still got, like, these things never really change. And so I think, what is your North Star? Like, what's your exit? What's your number? What's your goal? What's your feeling that you got to have? And then work from that, like, work back from that. And that's what I do. I work back from that. Like, what that goal, like, okay, I'm not good here with this, but I'm really good with this. I need to bring someone in to help me with this. And that's going to help make this better. But I don't really like how this works, but I got to know how to do this in order to make this work. And so, okay, let me take a class here and work on this. Like, it's just really making sure you can satisfy self, continue your happiness, right?
Yeah, very beautifully put. And I think it's that taking a step back from the immediate situation, the not acting hastily. To go back to your 4 pillars that I've heard you mention before, the active listening, validation, positive communication, and then just the reduction of that stigma, that grace people often talk about is that step. But you do it all with yourself as much as you do it with your community. So again, you are practicing what you're preaching, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. Second point in there, I love the approach you have to it and the self actualization that you have of yourself to understand that I don't necessarily know how to do something, and that's okay.
Yep.
There are people in my corner who do. And if there's not people in my corner who do, let's go find them, put them in my corner, or let's learn myself. But you've listened to yourself. You've given yourself that validation. It's okay if I don't know it. You had that positive communication of, okay, like you said, I'm gonna have to put out 3 fires today, 7 tomorrow, but we got this. Who can I call on? Is it myself? Is it your wife? Obviously, you mentioned she's a massive part of your program, what you got
Yep.
going, and in your life. I mean,
Yep.
business
Yep.
aside.
Yep. 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 Yep.
I want to take the last couple minutes before the final question on the podcast to let you talk about your books. I know we mentioned Mr. Sprinkles, but yours are just as powerful, just as impactful. Your books, your programs, anything that you've got that if someone's been enjoying this episode and they want more can go take a look at. Lorenzo, what do you got for us?
Yeah. So at LorenzoPLewis.com, we have Jumping Over Life Hurdles and Standing in the Race, which is my memoir. It really details and talks about my life in the form of visualizing the track race, right? And so right now we're talking about the Olympics. We're talking about, people going out here running 100-meter, 200-meter. And so in this book, I'm talking about my life through a track race, but really that's how all of our lives look, right? We're going through the race of life. And jumping over life hurdles and staying in the race is a visual that allows for us to navigate the different things that we're going to face. We're going to come up on the hurdles, right? We're going to, in a track race, they have to, run through the curves and go through the blocks, right? They have to finish that race, right? Whether they lose, win, or whatever the case may be, they have to get to the finish line some kind of way. At least they're supposed to. Somebody may get disqualified. Hey, that's how life works. We may not, jumping over life hurdles and staying in the race was a book that I talked about. Born in jail into an incarcerated mother, being in a mental health facility, going to jail, but overcoming it, building the Confess Project, and just some of my own journeys that I've navigated. But it's also given tools. Each chapter, I do what it calls a cool down. So even in a track race, they have something called a cool down, right? And so each chapter, I'm giving a cool down. I'm giving tactical ways of how to navigate and overcome things. So very much has a coaching spin to it, but very really like necessary. I have we have a workbook that's helping just as involved young people jumping over life hurdles and standing the race, the workbook, which is specifically for young people that's been just as involved and that have issues, that just had just issues in general. So, this is for like mentoring programs, Boys and Girls Club programs. This is for like programs that have young people attached to it. And so we have that as well. I have another book that I've done, The Impact of Influence, which is a duo book of authors. And yeah, so those are just a few of my, books. Obviously, I'm in the process now of writing the memoir of the Confess Project and going deeper into my personal journey. That's on the way in the coming future. And then last but not least, you don't know my story right now. I am pushing the domestic violence for Black women. Right now, domestic violence is really harming the African American community. And right now, there are more Black women that are dying by domestic violence. So I'm standing up. Our research is tied to domestic violence and mental health. And so I'm standing up as an advocate to say that we need to be more alert and have more tools that can help individuals who are impacted by and interpersonal violence. And so that can be found on my website at LorenzoPLewis.com. You want to find more about the Confess Project, the work that we're doing, the Confess Project of America.org can be found at all of your social medias at the Confess Project. It talks about the trainings we're doing across the country. Our social medias can show the events that we're doing, our public local events that we're doing in different communities. And so feel free to definitely stay tuned and follow and like and subscribe our work on my newsletter. It keeps people updated. So,
Yeah, thank you. We'll put the links to a bunch of that in the description below. So if you were like me and you just heard LorenzoPLewis.com, LorenzoPLewis.com, go there. All of what he just said is there. I've checked it out myself. Prices and everything. If you're thinking this is for you and you're tempted to click on it and see what it's about, what's the harm? Unless you're driving or operating machinery, click on it, right? I will throw that out there. I'm not going to say use your phone while you're driving. Sometimes you wonder. I'm guilty of it. But once you get to your destination, check out LorenzoPLewis.com. His social media is the same thing. The Confess Project, I cannot echo that enough. He's on to something good, and we all want you to be a part of it. Lorenzo, we are cutting close on time. I want to thank you very much for coming on the Make Mental podcast, but I have one question, the final question on the Make Mental podcast. Are you ready, sir?
yes,
If there is one person in the entire world right now who needs a hug from you, who would you give it to?
I'll say my aunt who raised me. Right now, she is struggling with memory loss and early stage dementia, and often I visit her back home. I moved to Atlanta about a year ago, and so when I go back home from time to time for work, checking on different things, and she often she's in the early stages of like losing her memory, so she's very sad. Often falls into like early stage depression with her going through this and very down about it sometimes. And sometimes she's very uplifted. She's very happy. So I would say her. She often thinks she's really trying to navigate this thing that's very difficult for her. And so I would say, she would be that person that I would like to extend that to, just because I know that she's really struggling and trying to figure out how life looks now going through memory loss. So,
Yeah, beautiful. Giving back some of those hugs that she gave you along the way in your journey. That's, I mean, beautifully, beautifully put in a fantastic way to end this episode. So, as I mentioned earlier, link in the description. We appreciate you for making it this far. If you did, please leave a review. Find us on social media at The Make Mental. Just The Make Mental now. We took out podcast for anyone who still might not be able to find us. And please show Lorenzo P. Lewis some love as well in the comments all over his social media. And if you feel so inclined, read about his story through his authoring. And I'm sure you can find some of his speeches on YouTube. So, Lorenzo, we appreciate just shy of an hour here spent with our community. I'm excited to see the light and the joy and the goodness that you will continue to bring to not only yours, but every place you go. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining the Make Mental podcast.